I will honestly say I don't remember ever speaking a word to Esther the whole time she was there.
For decades, fans of the classic sitcom Good Times believed that the Evans family was not just a TV family, but almost a real one. Esther Rolle, who played Florida Evans, became one of the most respected television mothers of all time. Jimmie Walker, who played her oldest son J.J. Evans, brought humor and energy to the show with his famous catchphrase, "D." On screen, they looked like a loving family who laughed together, argued together, and stood strong through hard times. But behind the scenes, the story was not so simple. For years, there were whispers that Jimmie Walker and Esther Rolle did not get along. Fans debated it in magazines, interviews, and later online forums. Some said they barely spoke when the cameras were off. Others believed there was tension whenever Rolle watched Walker deliver his over-the-top jokes. For almost 50 years, these rumors floated around without a clear answer. But now, at 78 years old, Jimmie Walker himself has finally spoken out. And what he revealed changes how many people see the history of Good Times. His words may not be filled with drama or fighting, but they confirm that what viewers imagined as a close relationship was, in truth, something very distant. When asked about his working relationship with Esther Rolle, Jimmie Walker did not try to hide anything. He said directly, "We were never friends. We never spoke, only on the set. I wouldn't even have her number. We never did anything together." This kind of statement shocked many fans, because they expected at least some personal connection between two people who played mother and son so convincingly. But Walker explained that there was simply no off-screen relationship. They were professionals doing their jobs, and once the scene was over, they returned to their separate lives. For audiences who grew up watching Good Times, this was hard to accept. The Evans family looked so real on screen, but in reality, there was silence when the cameras stopped rolling. Rolle and Walker did not argue or fight in front of the cast. There were no dramatic outbursts or insults. Instead, there was just distance, a quiet divide that no one ever tried to cross. To many, this silence felt almost louder than any argument could have been. Fans started to notice little things during the episodes. A pause after JJ delivered his jokes. A subtle shift in Rolle's body language. Some swore they could see tension in her eyes. These small details added fuel to the idea that the two were not close, even if they never fought openly. For nearly 50 years, the unanswered questions kept growing, until Walker's recent words finally gave clarity. The real reason for the distance between Rolle and Walker was not personal dislike. It was about the direction of the show. From the beginning, Esther Rolle and John Amos, who played the father, James Evans, believed Good Times should be about real issues. They wanted the show to represent the struggles, dignity, and pride of working-class black families in America. For them, it was more than just entertainment. It was an opportunity to show real life on television. But as JJ became more popular, things changed. Audiences loved his wild clothes, funny faces, and catchphrase. Ratings went up, and the network quickly decided to make him the center of attention. Rolle and Amos were unhappy with this change. They felt the show was losing its heart, replacing meaningful stories with cheap laughs. In interviews, Rolle once said, "They have made JJ more stupid and expanded his role. Negative portrayals have been snuck in on us." Double quotes. John Amos agreed, saying that writers used JJ's comedy as an easy way out instead of writing deeper stories. This creative clash created an invisible wall between the cast. Walker, still a young actor, simply did what the producers asked. He did not fight back against the direction of his character. And why would he? He was becoming a household name. But Rolle and Amos wanted more than laughs. They wanted respect and truth. And when those visions clashed, the atmosphere on set grew colder. Even if no one ever shouted about it, the creative battles did not just stay as quiet disagreements. Eventually, they changed the entire show. John Amos was the first to go. By the end of season 3, the producers wrote his character out of the show by killing him off in a car accident. Amos later explained that he was fired because he was seen as a disruptive element, since he kept fighting with the writers over the show's purpose. Rolle followed soon after. By season 4, she had grown frustrated with what she called the buffoonery of JJ's character. She left after season 4 but returned in season 6, only after negotiating for better pay and more control. One of her conditions was that JJ would be portrayed in a more responsible and positive way. By then, however, the original spark of Good Times had faded. The Evans family dynamic had been broken, and the show had shifted permanently toward comedy. For many fans, the heart of Good Times, the struggle, the lessons, and the emotional weight, was gone. Instead, the show leaned heavily on Walker's humor, and while it kept audiences laughing, it no longer carried the same impact it once had. Critics noticed the difference, too, pointing out that what had started as a groundbreaking family sitcom was now reduced to catchphrases. Not everyone remembered the situation as bitter or hostile. Bernadette Stannis, who played Thelma, and Ralph Carter, who played Michael, often spoke warmly about Esther Rolle and John Amos. They explained that the tension on set was not about personal fights but about creative disagreements with the writers and producers. Bernadette recalled that Esther was like a second mother to her, guiding her and protecting her when she was new to acting. She also remembered funny moments on set when everyone laughed together, including Rolle, once the pressure was off. Ralph Carter shared similar memories, recalling how close the cast felt like a family despite the disagreements. He remembered playful pranks and silly laughter between takes, which balanced out the heavier emotions of the serious storylines. Both Carter and Stannis made it clear that while Rolle and Amos had strong opinions about the show, they never treated the younger cast members badly. In fact, they were deeply protective and cared about how the family was represented on television. These memories remind fans that behind the headlines and rumors, there were still warm human connections being made while Esther Rolle and John Amos left the show. Jimmie Walker stayed until the end. It was not because everything was perfect, but because he was under contract and committed to finishing the job. When the show ended in 1979, Walker did not disappear. He returned to his first love, stand-up comedy. Long before Good Times, Walker had been a comedian performing in New York clubs, at the Apollo Theater, and even alongside famous musicians. After the show, he toured across the country, reminding audiences that comedy was his true foundation. He also took on roles in shows like The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and even appeared in Airplane. In 1980, in later years, he made guest appearances in shows like Everybody Hates Chris. His personal life remained private, with rumors about relationships but no confirmed marriages or children. In 2012, he published a memoir, Good Times, Bad Times, Our Times, where he honestly shared his experiences, his struggles in comedy, and the challenges of being at the center of a show where not everyone agreed on the vision. Even now, in his late 70s, Walker continues to perform live shows, proving that his humor has never lost its spark. Esther Rolle, meanwhile, left behind a legacy far greater than television fame. After Good Times, she chose her roles carefully, taking only parts that carried meaning. She won an Emmy Award in 1979 for her role in Summer of My German Soldier, becoming the first black woman to win in her category. She appeared in films like Driving Miss Daisy, Rosewood, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Even as her health declined, she remained committed to meaningful storytelling. Sadly, she passed away in 1998 at the age of 78 from complications of diabetes. Her funeral in Florida was attended by family, friends, and cast members, though Jimmie Walker did not attend. His absence sparked new debates among fans, with some wondering if the distance between them had remained until the end. Whatever the case, Rolle's legacy has been preserved. Her awards, scripts, and personal items are displayed at the African American Research Library in Fort Lauderdale. She may not have aimed to be a superstar, but she became a legend by staying true to her values. In the end, the story of Jimmie Walker and Esther Rolle is not one of hatred or betrayal, but of two very different people with different visions. Walker embraced the comedy that made him famous, while Rolle fought for dignity, truth, and meaningful representation. Their distance was not because they disliked each other as people, but because they never found common ground in how they saw the show. For fans, it may be disappointing to learn that the warmth seen on screen did not extend off-screen, but perhaps what matters more is what they achieved together. Good Times made history, entertained millions, and opened doors for more honest representations of black families on television. Rolle, Walker, Amos, and the rest of the cast each played a part in building that legacy. Even now, decades later, fans still talk about it, proving that while the Evans family may not have been close in real life, they still created something unforgettable on screen. When Good Times first aired in 1974, audiences were immediately drawn to it because it was different from most sitcoms of the era. Viewers were used to light comedies about suburban families, but this show was about a working-class black family living in a Chicago housing project. It dealt with serious issues like poverty, unemployment, crime, and discrimination, topics rarely seen on television at the time. Esther Rolle loved this direction because she felt it reflected the real experiences of people she knew. John Amos supported her, believing that comedy could exist alongside truth. But when JJ's wild personality took over the spotlight, viewers responded with laughter. Ratings went up, but not everyone was happy. Many fans wrote letters to the network, some praising Jimmie Walker for making them laugh, while others complained that his character was becoming a caricature. Newspapers and magazines also debated the issue. Some critics argued that JJ's comedy was an important part of the show's charm, while others sided with Rolle, saying it was harmful to rely on stereotypes. This tension between what audiences enjoyed and what critics demanded mirrored the bigger cultural struggles of the 1970s. When black representation in media was finally becoming a national discussion, Rolle was not just fighting with producers, she was also pushing against a system that often preferred laughs over depth. Her fight was bigger than the show itself. It was part of a larger cultural battle. During the years Good Times was on the air, Magazines frequently covered rumors about conflicts behind the scenes. Reporters loved to ask the cast about their relationships, hoping to get dramatic answers. Esther Rolle often gave serious interviews, explaining that she did not support how JJ was being written. She even went on record saying that the writers were turning him into a clown. John Amos echoed her frustration, which only fueled the press coverage. Jimmie Walker, however, usually stayed quiet. He did not lash out or insult Rolle, but his silence was sometimes read as indifference. The media painted the story as a feud, even though there was never a shouting match or a public fight between the two. Decades later, Walker's statement that he and Rolle never spoke outside of work confirmed that the feud was really more about distance than hatred. But at the time, the headlines made it sound like a war. For fans, this only added mystery. People debated whether Rolle was too strict or whether Walker was too careless. These discussions kept the show in the spotlight, but they also deepened the divide in public opinion. Looking back, it's clear that much of the media coverage exaggerated the drama. But the fact remains, Rolle and Walker never formed the personal bond people expected. Despite the behind-the-scenes tension, Good Times broke barriers. It was one of the first shows to put a black family at the center of primetime television. It inspired future sitcoms like The Cosby Show, Family Matters, and even Black-ish, which all carried forward the tradition of exploring black family life on screen. For many families watching, in the 1970s, Good Times was more than entertainment, it was representation. People saw characters who looked like them, lived like them, and faced struggles they recognized. Even though the show sometimes leaned into comedy more than Esther Rolle wanted, it still gave visibility to issues that had been ignored by mainstream television. The famous scene where Florida shouts "Damn, damn," after James's death is still remembered as one of the most powerful moments in TV history. It showed grief in a raw, emotional way that viewers rarely saw in sitcoms. Moments like that proved Rolle's point. The show had the power to be more than just funny. Even if she and Walker never connected personally, their combined performances created something lasting. Walker's humor brought levity, while Rolle's strength brought gravity. Together, even in silence, they made Good Times unforgettable. After Good Times, Jimmie Walker had to navigate a difficult career path. He was forever linked to JJ, and while people loved the catchphrase "Do I," it also became a limitation. Casting directors often saw him as nothing more than the goofy son, making it harder for him to land serious roles. Walker leaned into comedy, touring across the United States as a stand-up performer. He worked with big names in comedy, including Jay Leno and David Letterman, both of whom wrote jokes for him early in their careers. Despite being typecast, Walker managed to carve out a long-lasting career by staying on stage and keeping audiences laughing. He appeared on game shows, talk shows, and occasionally in TV guest roles, always bringing his unique energy. But Walker also admitted in interviews that fame was not always easy. He struggled with the pressure of living up to the legacy, and he never fully escaped the shadow of JJ yet. By staying true to comedy, he found his peace. Even today, he performs at comedy clubs and events, proving that he still has the spark that made audiences love him in the first place. Esther Rolle did not seek fame in the same way. After leaving Good Times, she focused on projects that reflected her values. She believed strongly in showing dignity and truth in every role she played. In addition to her Emmy-winning performance in Summer of My German Soldier, she took on roles that explored history, race, and social justice. She worked in theater, television, and film, always careful about the parts she accepted. Off-screen, she was an activist for equal representation, fighting for opportunities for black actors in Hollywood. Rolle believed that the entertainment industry had a responsibility to shape how society saw African Americans, and she took that responsibility seriously. Even when she returned to Good Times, it was on her own terms, with demands that reflected her commitment to positive storytelling. Her influence extended far beyond acting. Younger performers admired her strength and discipline, seeing her as both a mentor and a pioneer. By the time of her death in 1998, she had become a symbol of integrity in the entertainment world. While she may not have had a warm friendship with Jimmie Walker, her legacy continues to shape how people think about representation in media. The story of Jimmie Walker and Esther Rolle is more than just a Hollywood tale. It's a lesson about vision, values, and the challenges of creative work. Two actors shared the screen, created iconic television moments, and made millions laugh and cry, but they could not find common ground behind the scenes. Their silence reminds us that not every successful partnership requires friendship. Sometimes, professionalism is enough to create greatness. Yet, their differences also highlight the struggles of balancing entertainment and responsibility. Rolle believed comedy should never come at the cost of dignity. Walker believed in giving audiences joy through laughter. Neither was wrong, but the clash of these values shaped the history of the show. For fans, it may be sad to know that they were never close, but perhaps it is better to see it as a reminder of what happens when different visions collide. Out of that collision came a show that changed television forever. Whether through Rolle's strength or Walker's humor, Good Times left a mark that still matters today.